fellow travelers, friends dreaming of retiring in Thailand. Let me take you into the darkest night of one man's life. A middle-aged man from the U.S., sitting alone in a Bangkok hotel room. The air conditioner rattles weakly against the sweltering heat. The city outside is alive with neon lights and the buzzing of tuk-tuks, but inside his room, silence screams louder than any nightlife. His name was Michael. 52 years old. A man who once had everything: an established business back in the States, a wife, 2 grown kids, a suburban house with a neatly trimmed lawn. A man who worked decades building comfort and stability. But that night, Michael sat with his head in his hands, staring at the screen of his laptop. His online banking page glowed like a cruel joke. The number on the screen was not millions. Not even thousands. It was zero. Every single dollar he had left in Thailand, every investment he thought he had built with the woman he loved, gone. And that woman, Tipnare, was nowhere to be found. She wasn't answering her phone. The condo they shared stood empty, her belongings vanished. The neighbors whispered that they'd seen her leave 2 nights ago with another man, laughing, suitcase in hand. Michael's heart pounded as the reality sank in. This wasn't just about money. This was about trust. About love. About a dream that had turned into a nightmare. He had left behind a family who on. And before we go deeper, let me say this. Friends, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. Trust me, what I'm about to share could save your future. Because what happened to Michael could happen to any foreign man who believes paradise means safety. Stay with me. Because the way Michael's life unraveled in Thailand is more shocking, more heartbreaking, and more terrifying than you can imagine. Michael was born in Ohio, raised in a modest family where hard work was the only religion. By his late 20s, he had built his own logistics company, married his college sweetheart, and bought a comfortable home in the suburbs. From the outside, his life was the very definition of the American dream. But dreams have cracks. By the time he hit 50, Michael felt hollow. His marriage had turned into routine, long silences at the dinner table, separate bedrooms most nights, and constant arguments about money, work, and the distance between them. His children, now adults, had started their own lives. They rarely called except on birthdays and holidays. Michael looked in the mirror each morning and saw a man who had spent decades working 12-hour days, only to find himself aging, lonely, and unloved. His once thick hair had thinned, his waistline had grown, and his smile, once boyish and confident, rarely appeared anymore. Then came the blow that broke him. His wife discovered he had been messaging women online. Not affairs, at least not yet, but late-night chats with strangers, women from dating apps and foreign forums. Words of affection, little sparks of excitement, the kind of attention he hadn't felt in years. His wife called it betrayal. Michael called it survival. The marriage collapsed under the weight of it all. The divorce was messy. She took half of everything, half the house, half the savings, half the dignity he thought he still had. His children, loyal to their mother, distanced themselves from him. He became the villain in their eyes, the man who broke the family apart. For the first time in his life, Michael was truly alone. And in that loneliness, Thailand began to whisper to him. He had visited Bangkok once in his 40s on a business trip. He remembered the rush of walking through the streets of Sukhumvit, neon signs glowing, the smell of sizzling street food filling the air. He remembered the kindness of Thai strangers, the sense of youth and energy around him. But most of all, he remembered the women. Not just their beauty, but the way they smiled at him, spoke softly, leaned close. They made him feel alive, seen, wanted. Something he hadn't felt at home in years. So when the divorce left him broken and bitter, Thailand became more than a memory, it became an escape. His friends back in Ohio couldn't understand. "Mike, you're crazy," they said. "You're throwing your life away. You'll get eaten alive out there." But Michael didn't care. He sold his share of the business, cashed in his savings, and told himself he was going to start fresh. No more nagging. No more cold shoulders. No more being invisible in my own home, he thought. Thailand was the answer. Paradise. A second chance. But here's the thing, friends. That's how it always begins. With loneliness. With regret. With a desire to rewrite your life in a place where the smiles feel warmer, the nights feel longer, and the promises feel real. Michael boarded a one-way flight to Bangkok, convinced he was finally choosing happiness. He left behind the ashes of a broken family, chasing the mirage of love and freedom in a foreign land. What he didn't know was that this decision, the decision to leave it all behind, would cost him more than he ever imagined. Because while Michael thought he was escaping hell, he was actually walking straight into it. And it all began the moment he stepped back onto Thai soil, heart wide open, wallet even wider. In the next part, we'll see his first impressions of Thailand, the beauty, the freedom, the intoxicating feeling of starting over, and the subtle shadows lurking behind the paradise he thought he had found. When Michael landed in Bangkok, it was as if the city itself wrapped him in a warm, intoxicating embrace. The blast of humid air hit him the moment the airport doors slid open. The sound of taxi drivers calling out, the scent of grilled chicken skewers and spicy papaya salad drifting from food stalls, it was overwhelming, chaotic, and alive. And for the first time in years, Michael felt alive too. He checked into a serviced apartment in Sukhumvit, high above the traffic. At night, he would stand on his balcony and watch the city pulse with neon. Tuk-tuks whizzed past below, music from rooftop bars drifted through the humid air, and he thought to himself, this is freedom. This is my new life. Every day was a discovery. Street food for less than $1, bowls of noodles steaming with chili and lime. Temples glowing gold in the late afternoon sun. Mornings in Lumpini Park, where elderly locals practiced Tai Chi while the city's skyscrapers shimmered in the background. He wandered through Chattachak Market on weekends, amazed at how far his money stretched. Back in Ohio, life had been bills, mortgages, and endless expenses. Here, a few $100s bought him comfort, adventure, and the attention of smiling strangers. It wasn't long before Michael connected with other expats. Over beers in crowded sports bars, they shared the same stories: failed marriages back home, families who no longer called, dreams of starting over. Some were digital nomads tapping away on laptops in cafes. Others were retirees living off pensions, lured by the low cost of living and the promise of companionship. Thailand, one man told him, is paradise, if you play your cards right. But another warned, with a bitter laugh, just don't fall in love too fast. That's the trap. Michael laughed along, brushing off the warning. At the time, he couldn't imagine himself being careless. After all, he was a businessman, experienced, practical, not some fool with money to burn. But friends, this is how paradise hides its traps. The beaches of Pattaya glitter under the sun, but in the shadows, hustlers wait. Chiang Mai offers peace and culture, but beneath the quiet lies a different kind of seduction. And Bangkok, the city Michael loved most, thrives on opportunity, but also on opportunists. Still, Michael wasn't looking for love. Not yet. He told himself he wanted to focus on business first. He began exploring opportunities, import-export, small investments, even talk of opening a restaurant with another expat. But in truth, business was just a cover. What Michael really craved was connection. Because no matter how much he enjoyed the food, the sights, and the freedom, nights in Bangkok were long. The city never slept, but when Michael returned to his apartment, he did. Alone. And the loneliness that had followed him from Ohio crept back in. It was in that vulnerable space, between excitement and emptiness, that Michael's fate turned. One night, as he sat at a quiet bar in Usoke, sipping whiskey and watching the city lights blur through the window, he saw her. Tipnare. She wasn't like the others. Not loud, not flashy. She wore a simple dress, her long hair falling over one shoulder, her smile shy yet magnetic. When their eyes met, Michael felt something stir that he thought had died long ago. And friends, this is where his story truly begins. Because in that moment, in that smile, Michael didn't see danger. He saw salvation. He saw youth, beauty, and the second chance he thought Thailand had promised him. What he didn't know was that Tipnare wasn't just a girl in a bar. She was the storm that would wash away everything he had left. In the next part, we'll dive into how Michael met Tipnare, how she swept into his life like a dream, and why he ignored every red flag along the way. Michael would later admit that the first time he saw Tipnare, it felt like something out of a movie. It was a warm Bangkok evening. The city hummed outside with the usual chaos, street vendors calling out, motorbikes weaving dangerously through traffic, neon signs flickering above Soi 11. But inside the small cocktail bar where Michael sat, the noise faded. Jazz music played softly in the background. Dim lights glowed over polished wooden tables. And then, there she was. Tipnare. She looked no older than her early 20s. A simple white dress hugged her frame, not flashy but elegant enough to stand out. She wasn't drenched in makeup like many of the other girls working the nightlife scene. Her beauty felt softer, quieter, like a secret only Michael had been lucky enough to discover. Their eyes met. She smiled. Not the kind of smile that screamed for attention, but one that seemed genuine. Timid. Almost shy. Michael's heart skipped. He hadn't felt that rush in decades. She walked past his table once, then again. On the second pass, she stopped. "You are alone?" she asked, her English delicate, with that lilting Thai accent that always sounded like music to his ears. "Yes," Michael said. His voice cracked slightly, betraying the loneliness he tried so hard to hide. She tilted her head. "Maybe I sit with you?" And just like that, Paradise slipped into the seat across from him. They talked for hours that night. Tipnare told him about her life, at least, the version she wanted him to believe. She said she wasn't like the other girls in the bar. She wasn't working for money. She was just helping her cousin who owned the place. By day, she was studying business at university. By night, she sometimes came here, just to practice her English. Michael wanted to believe her. And so, he did. She spoke about her dreams, owning her own boutique, traveling the world, maybe even starting a family someday. And when Michael confessed that he had recently divorced, that he was looking for a new life, her eyes softened. She placed her hand gently over his. "Maybe your new life start with me," she whispered. "Friends, let me pause here. This is where many men get caught, the perfect storm of loneliness, flattery, and a beautiful young woman saying exactly what you long to hear." And Michael, like so many others, was already hooked. That night, Tipnare didn't ask for money. She didn't pressure him into buying champagne or booking a girlfriend experience. Instead, she simply gave him her number and told him she wanted to see him again. Michael walked back to his apartment with her smile burned into his memory. He felt lighter than he had in years. Younger. Desired. Alive. The next days blurred into weeks. They met for dinners at riverside restaurants, walked hand in hand through night markets, and shared quiet conversations in cafes. Tipnare was always attentive, always affectionate. She laughed at his jokes, listened to his stories, and looked at him like he was the only man in the world. It was intoxicating. Michael told himself this wasn't some cliché, bar girl fling. No, Tipnare was different. She was educated, sweet, and most importantly, she seemed to truly care about him. But friends, let me tell you the cruel truth. The most dangerous scams don't feel like scams. They feel like love. The red flags were there. She never spoke much about her family. She always had vague explanations when she disappeared for a day or two. She seemed to know exactly how to mirror Michael's emotions, how to make him feel special at the precise moment he started doubting himself. But Michael didn't see it. He didn't want to see it. Because after years of being ignored, dismissed, and unloved, Tipnare's attention was like oxygen. And when you're starving, even poison can taste like a feast. And so, Michael fell. Harder than he ever thought possible. He began introducing her to his expat friends, proudly holding her hand as if to prove he wasn't the lonely divorcee they thought he was. And though some smiled politely, others pulled him aside. "Mike, be careful," one whispered. "She's too young. Too perfect. Don't rush this." But Michael waved them off. They didn't understand. They didn't feel what he felt. This was real. This was love. He was convinced Tipnare wasn't just his girlfriend. She was his second chance at life. What he didn't know was that Tipnare was already weaving the web. Step by step. Smile by smile. Waiting for the right moment to strike. In the next part, we'll see how Tipnare built trust and intimacy. How she made Michael believe he was not just a lover, but the chosen one. Michael had been in Thailand only a few months, but with Tipnare by his side, it felt as though he'd been reborn. Every morning, she sent him messages. "Good morning, my love. Did you sleep well?" Every night, she signed off with, "Good night, dream of me." He couldn't remember the last time a woman cared about the small details of his day, if anyone ever had. She became part of his routine, his anchor in a country where everything else was still unfamiliar. But what Michael didn't realize was that this was more than affection. It was strategy. Tipnare introduced Michael to a side of her life that made her seem different from the women his friends warned him about. She took him to meet her aunt in a small neighborhood outside Bangkok. The woman welcomed him warmly, serving him som tam and grilled chicken in her modest home. "She is like my second mother," Tipnare whispered, resting her hand on his arm. "She approves of you." Michael's heart swelled. It felt like validation, not just from Tipnare, but from her family. Later, she showed him pictures of her childhood, grainy photos of her in a school uniform, standing beside an older woman she called her mother. "We had nothing," she told him, eyes glistening. "But I always dreamed of more." That night, when Michael held her close, he wasn't just with a young woman. He felt he was with someone who had suffered, survived, and chosen him to be her future. This is how scammers work, friends. They don't just seduce your body, they seduce your sympathy. Tipnare shared secrets with Michael. She told him about a violent ex-boyfriend who once threatened her. She confessed she sometimes worried about her financial future, but she didn't want to be like the other girls in bars, selling themselves. She told him she wanted something real. Every story was perfectly crafted to do two things: make Michael see her as vulnerable, make him feel like her savior. And Michael fell deeper into the role. Their intimacy grew, not just physically, but emotionally. She began calling him my husband in private. She whispered about the children they might have, the house they might build, the life they could share together. Michael, who once ate alone in Ohio, now sat at dinner tables across Bangkok with a beautiful woman who laughed at his jokes, clinked glasses with him, and made him feel like the star of his own love story. He told himself, this isn't just romance. This is destiny. Yet, there were moments, a strange phone call she ignored, a weekend where she said she had to go visit her cousin upcountry, only to return with no photos or details. Michael's gut whispered doubt. But every time suspicion rose, Tipnare countered with tenderness. A tearful confession. A night of passion. A soft kiss and a whispered, "Don't ever doubt me, my love. You are the only one who understands me." And that phrase, "the only one," was the drug that kept him hooked. Because Michael wasn't just lonely. He was desperate to matter to someone again. Friends, listen carefully. When a woman you've just met begins weaving you into her future, talking about marriage, children, and destiny, it's not romance. It's a tactic. A fast-forward button designed to bypass your logic and drown you in emotion. But Michael didn't see it. Or maybe he didn't want to. He told himself his friends were wrong. Tipnare wasn't a bar girl chasing money. She was different. She was his future. And in believing that, he was unknowingly walking into the next stage of her plan. Because when trust is built, the next step is inevitable. Soon, the first financial request would arrive. Innocent. Believable. Justified by her love. And when it did, Michael wouldn't hesitate. In the next part, we'll uncover that moment, the first time Tipnare asked for money, how small the request seemed, and how it opened the door to a flood of manipulation that would drain everything he had. It started so small. One evening, Michael and Tipnare were sitting in a quiet restaurant by the Chao Phraya River. The lights of Bangkok shimmered across the water, and soft Thai music played in the background. They had just finished dinner when Tipnare grew quiet. Her usual laughter faded. She picked at her food, her smile forced. Michael noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked. She shook her head. "Nothing, my love. I don't want to bother you." He pressed her gently. "Tell me. You know you can trust me." And then, with perfect timing, she sighed and whispered, "It's my mother." She explained that her mother had fallen sick. Nothing too serious, she assured him, just a hospital bill they couldn't cover. Her family was poor, and she was ashamed to even mention it. She didn't want him to think she was like those other girls, always asking foreigners for money. Michael's heart softened instantly. He reached across the table and took her hand. "How much is it?" he asked. Her eyes filled with tears. "It's too much," she said, shaking her head. "You already do so much for me." But Michael insisted. Finally, she whispered, "It's around 15,000 baht." About $450. To Michael, it was nothing. Back in the States, he'd spent more than that on golf clubs he barely used. He smiled, relieved. Of course, I'll help. Tipnare's eyes widened with gratitude. She hugged him tightly, whispering, I will pay you back, I promise. You are my angel. That night, Michael felt like a hero. For once in his life, he wasn't just a man spending money on a young woman. He was a provider, a protector, the man she leaned on when life got tough. And that's how the hook sank deeper. The request had been small, believable. Justified by family, cloaked in shame, presented reluctantly. To Michael, it didn't even feel like giving money, it felt like proving his love. And Tipnare knew it. Over the next weeks, she continued to build the story. Her mother was recovering, thanks to Michael's kindness. She told him her family prayed for him every night, thanking the heavens for bringing him into their lives. Michael glowed with pride. For the first time in years, he felt needed. Not by a wife who criticized him, not by children who ignored him, but by a young woman who looked at him with devotion and gratitude. Friends, this is exactly how the spiral begins. It's never a big ask at first. It's never, give me thousands. No, it's something small, wrapped in emotion. A hospital bill. A tuition payment. A sick pet. Just enough to make you think, well, it's no big deal. I can afford it. And besides, this proves she really trusts me. But once you say yes to the first request, you've crossed a line. Now, you're no longer just a boyfriend. You're a provider. And the scammer knows it. Michael didn't see it that way. He thought he was helping his future wife. He thought he was showing her family the kind of man he truly was. In reality, he had just opened the door. The next requests wouldn't be so small. Because once a scammer knows you'll say yes, the game changes. The emergencies get bigger. The stories get bolder. And the amounts, they only go up. And for Michael, the second request wasn't far away. This time, it wasn't about family, it was about their future together. In the next part, we'll reveal how Tipnare escalated from small favors to big dreams, convincing Michael to invest in their business, a move that would drag him deeper into the web of deception. The hospital bill had been paid. Tipnare's mother had supposedly recovered. Michael felt proud, reassured, and closer to Tipnare than ever. But soon, her tone shifted. No longer was she the shy student with small problems. Now she spoke of big dreams, the kind couples whisper to each other when they're building a future. Michael, she said one night as they strolled hand in hand through a night market, lanterns glowing above them, I don't want to just work in bars or depend on anyone. I want us to have something of our own. Michael raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? She smiled, eyes sparkling. A business. Our business. A restaurant maybe, or a coffee shop. Something small but special. You have experience. I have ideas. Together we can build it. Her words lit up something deep in him. This wasn't just romance anymore. This was partnership. Legacy. A chance to create something lasting in Thailand, to prove he wasn't just another aging expat chasing girls half his age. The first idea was modest. A cafe near her university, serving coffee, tea, and cakes. She showed him spaces for rent, introduced him to friends who supposedly knew people in real estate. The rent wasn't much, she said, about 30,000 baht per month. Renovations could be done cheaply. But as the conversations continued, the numbers grew. Suddenly, the cafe idea became a small restaurant. Then a lounge. Then, why not both? Tipnare painted vivid pictures, customers lining up, her greeting them in a smart uniform, Michael in the back managing finances. You won't just be my husband, she whispered. You will be my partner. My king. Michael was intoxicated by the vision. After years of feeling like a failure at home, this was redemption. Not only was he in love, but he was also on the brink of becoming a successful businessman in Thailand. There was only one catch. Foreigners cannot own land here, Tipnare explained, her tone full of regret. You can't sign the papers. But don't worry. I will do it for us. I will put everything in my name. It's only legal way. I swear, it will always be ours. Michael hesitated. Every expat forum warned about this exact scenario. Never put property in someone else's name. But when he looked into Tipnare's wide, innocent eyes, his doubt melted. She wasn't like the others. She loved him. She had introduced him to her family. She had cried in his arms. Surely, she could be trusted. So, Michael began wiring money. First tens of thousands. Then hundreds of thousands. Renovations, permits, suppliers, all flowing through Tipnare's hands. She sent him photos of progress, workers painting walls, delivery trucks unloading furniture, receipts in Thai he couldn't read. It all looked real. And with every transfer, Michael told himself the same thing. We are building our future together. This isn't spending. This is investing. Friends, this is one of the cruelest tricks of all. When a scammer escalates from asking for money to offering business ventures, the victim feels like a partner, not an ATM. The psychology flips. Instead of feeling drained, the victim feels invested, committed, bound. But here's the reality. Every baht went straight into Tipnare's pocket. The cafe never opened. The renovations, staged photos, borrowed from other shops. The legal papers, forged documents from a friend who played the role of lawyer. And Michael, blinded by love and pride, believed every word. His expat friends noticed the change. "Mike, be careful," one warned over beers. "I've seen this before. Business ventures, property in her name, it never ends well." Michael bristled. "You don't know her like I do. She's different. Different." That word has fooled countless men before him. Within months, Michael had poured nearly $500,000 into Tipnare's hands. The business was supposedly just weeks from opening. She showed him menus she designed, staff uniforms, even a website mock-up. But then, delays. Excuses. The inspector wants more money. The supplier needs advance payment. The landlord is changing the contract. Each new problem required another transfer. And Michael, desperate not to lose what he had already put in, kept paying. It's a psychological trap known as the sunk cost fallacy. The more you've already given, the harder it becomes to walk away. Because walking away means admitting you were wrong all along. And Michael couldn't bear that thought. So he kept sending, kept believing, kept telling himself that soon, everything would pay off. But paradise was cracking. Because while Michael dreamed of ribbon-cutting ceremonies and late nights managing their restaurant together, Tipnare was already planning her exit. In the next part, we'll see how the illusion grew darker, how Tipnare's lifestyle inflated, how she pulled Michael further away from his friends, and how he mistook manipulation for devotion. The business investment was supposedly underway. Michael had transferred hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yet, instead of construction dust and progress reports, what he began to see was Tipnare's lifestyle transforming right before his eyes. She no longer wore the modest white dress from the night they first met. Now it was designer handbags swinging from her arm, sparkling jewelry glittering on her wrists, and the latest iPhone flashing in her hand. "Baby," she explained sweetly when Michael asked, "I must look professional. For our business. People will respect me more if I dress well." And Michael believed her. Because to question her now would mean questioning everything. His money, his love, his future. Soon, dinners shifted from cozy local spots to luxury rooftop restaurants. Instead of pad kra pao on the street, it was imported steaks and bottles of wine that cost more than Michael's old mortgage payments. She started suggesting weekend getaways too, Pattaya, Hua Hin, even Phuket. "We need time together before the business opens," she insisted. "You work so hard, my love. Let me spoil you." Of course, Michael paid for everything. Flights, resorts, fine dining. And when the bills added up, she always reminded him, "Don't worry. Soon, our business will make all this back and more." But the biggest shift wasn't material, it was emotional. Tipnare began tightening her grip on Michael's heart. She spoke often of marriage, slipping the word husband into conversations. Sometimes she would hold his hand, eyes wet with tears, and whisper, "You are the only man who has ever truly loved me. Please never leave me." Michael melted every time. For a man who once felt discarded by his wife and overlooked by his children, those words were oxygen. Soon, They performed a small sin sod ceremony, an informal engagement common in Thai culture. Tipnare arranged everything. Her family gathered, monks chanted, and Michael handed over an envelope of cash as a bride price. It wasn't legally binding, but in his heart, he was already her husband. And that was exactly the point. Friends, this is how manipulation deepens. Once you believe you're married, or destined to be, it becomes nearly impossible to step back. Doubt feels like betrayal. Questioning her motives feels like betraying your own love story. So when Michael's friends confronted him again, warning him of stories they'd heard, other men, other scams, he pulled away from them instead of her. "They don't understand us," Tipnare would whisper in his ear. "They are jealous. They don't want me to be happy with you." And slowly, Michael's circle shrank. The friends who might have saved him were pushed aside, while Tipnare filled the empty space with more promises, more intimacy, more control. Her demands grew bolder. When she wanted a car, she told Michael it was for business deliveries. He bought her a brand-new Toyota. When she wanted a condo upgrade, she told him it was for their future children. He signed the lease. Each purchase was framed as part of their shared dream. And each time, Michael justified it by telling himself, "This is not spending. This is investing in us." But here's the truth. It wasn't us. It was her. By now, Michael was financially, emotionally, and socially bound to Tipnare. He had invested too much money, too much pride, too much of himself to even imagine walking away. Yet beneath the champagne dinners and romantic sunsets, cracks were beginning to show. There were moments when Tipnare's affection slipped. She snapped at him for small things, ordering the wrong dish, not transferring money quickly enough. She grew impatient, sometimes disappearing for nights without clear explanations. Michael noticed. His gut tightened. But each time, Tipnare reeled him back in with affection, tears, or whispered promises of the family they would one day have together. And Michael, terrified of losing her, terrified of admitting he might be wrong, chose denial. Friends, denial is the soil where betrayal grows deepest. Because while Michael convinced himself everything was fine, Tipnare was already preparing the next act. And it wouldn't just be lavish dinners or condos. It would be the final stage, the cold, calculated betrayal that would strip Michael of everything he had left. In the next part, we'll step into that turning point. The cracks growing wider, the inconsistencies piling up, and Michael's first glimpse of the truth he refused to see. For months, Michael had lived in a haze of romance and indulgence. The cars, the condo, the vacations, it all looked like a love story carved in gold. But slowly, the shine began to dull. It started with small inconsistencies. One evening, Michael noticed Tipnare's phone buzzing across the table. A man's name flashed on the screen. When he asked who it was, she laughed nervously and brushed it off. "Just my cousin," she said, quickly silencing the call. But Michael had never heard of this cousin before. Another time, she told him she was visiting her mother in the countryside. But when he called her late at night, he heard music pounding in the background, club music, not village silence. She hung up quickly, sending a message minutes later, "Sorry, my love. Bad signal here." Michael's chest tightened with suspicion. The stories weren't lining up. And yet, every time he tried to press her, Tipnare flipped the script. "Why you don't trust me?" she would say, eyes filling with tears. "You are my world. You think I would hurt you." The guilt crushed him. He would apologize, hold her, and tell himself he was overthinking. After all, hadn't she proven her love? Hadn't she called him her husband, shared her dreams, introduced him to family? Still, unease lingered. The turning point came one night when Michael met an older expat at a bar in Sukhumvit. The man's face was lined, his eyes tired. Over a drink, he leaned closer and said, "Your girl. Tipnare, right?" Michael froze. "You know her?" The man gave a weary smile. "Not personally. But I've seen her before. With other foreigners. She's been around, my friend. Be careful." Michael's stomach churned. He wanted to dismiss it, to call the man bitter or jealous. But the words sank like stones in his chest. When he told Tipnare about the encounter, she erupted. "That man liar. He jealous because I am young and beautiful. He want to break us apart." She stormed out, leaving Michael rattled and guilty. Hours later, she returned in tears, collapsing into his arms. "Please, don't ever doubt me again. You are all I have." And once again, Michael believed. But friends, belief doesn't erase the truth. Tipnare's behavior shifted. She became colder, more demanding. Transfers had to be sent immediately. Delays in money brought sudden arguments. "If you love me, you prove it," she snapped one night, slamming her phone on the table. Michael began walking on eggshells, terrified of upsetting her. He was no longer the proud provider. He was the desperate man clinging to the woman who held his heart, his money, and his future in her hands. His friends noticed the change. They saw the worry etched on his face, the way his shoulders slumped, the way his wallet seemed to open quicker than his smile. Some tried to intervene again, but Michael had grown isolated. He didn't want to hear warnings, because to admit they were right meant admitting he had been a fool. And nothing terrifies a man more than realizing the love he built his new life on might be nothing more than a lie. But the cracks were spreading, and soon they would split wide open. Because while Michael struggled with doubt, the truth was already waiting for him, sharp, merciless, and impossible to ignore. In the next part, we'll step into the revelation and betrayal. The moment Michael's world collapsed, when Tipnare's mask finally slipped, and the paradise he thought he found turned into hell. It was a humid Bangkok afternoon when the truth finally struck Michael like a blade to the chest. He had returned early to their condo, carrying bags of groceries and a bottle of wine. He wanted to surprise Tipnare, to bring back the laughter that had slowly been fading from their evenings. But when he opened the door, the surprise was his. The closet was empty. Her dresses, her handbags, her shoes, all gone. The jewelry he had bought her. The documents for their business. Even the Toyota he had signed for vanished. Only silence remained. Michael's hands trembled as he set the groceries down. His heart pounded as he rushed to his laptop, opening his online banking. The screen flickered, loading slowly, and then it appeared. Balance, 0.00. His mouth went dry. He refreshed the page again, and again. Still zero. Every account tied to Thailand, every transfer he had made, had been siphoned away. The money was gone. So was Tipnare. At first, he refused to believe it. He called her phone, no answer. He sent messages, no reply. Hours later, his texts turned frantic. "Where are you? Please call me. I'll fix whatever's wrong, just come home." But the phone stayed dark. By evening, his desperation turned to panic. He called her aunt, the same woman who had served him food months earlier. She answered briefly, then hung up when he mentioned Tipnare's name. Neighbors whispered they had seen her leaving days earlier, laughing, arm in arm with another foreign man. A suitcase rolled behind her. Michael staggered back to the condo, collapsing into a chair. The room spun. Everything, the money, the dreams, the promises, was gone. And then, as if to mock him, an email arrived. It was from Tipnare. Just a single line, written in broken English. "I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. Don't look for me." No explanation. No apology. No love. Just cold finality. Michael's devastation was indescribable. He screamed into the empty room, cursed himself for being blind, cursed her for being cruel. He punched the wall until his knuckles bled. Then he sank to the floor, sobbing like a child, shaking with a grief deeper than any he had ever known. Because this wasn't just about money. It was about dignity. It was about trust. It was about the fact that he had sacrificed everything. His marriage, his children's respect, his savings, for a woman who had seen him not as a lover, not as a partner, but as prey. Michael had retired in paradise, and it had ended in hell. The confrontation he dreamed of never came. Tipnare was gone. No dramatic showdown, no last chance for closure. She had played her role, drained him dry, and moved on. That's the cruelty of these scams, friends. The betrayal is sharp, but the absence is sharper. There is no face-to-face ending, no explanation that makes sense. Only silence, only emptiness, only the echo of promises that were never real. Michael sat in the dark that night, whiskey bottle in hand, staring at the Bangkok skyline. The city still pulsed with life, tuk-tuks still buzzed below, neon signs still flickered. But for him, the lights had gone out. Everything he had left was gone. And worse than the money was the shame. How could he tell his children? How could he face his friends? How could he admit to the world that he, a seasoned businessman, had been fooled by a 20-something girl with a sweet smile and a dangerous secret? The truth was brutal. He couldn't. So he sat there alone, drowning in the realization that the woman he thought was his salvation had been the storm that destroyed him. In the next part, we'll explore the aftermath and recovery. How Michael tried to rebuild his life from the ashes, the financial and emotional toll, and what lessons his pain leaves behind for anyone dreaming of love in Thailand. When the shock began to settle, Michael was left with nothing but questions. Where had she gone? Who had she really been with all those nights she disappeared? Was the aunt even real, or just another actress in the elaborate play? But the questions had no answers. Tipnare was gone, and the Bangkok nights that once felt electric now felt suffocating. Financially, the damage was catastrophic. Michael calculated his losses. Nearly $500,000 siphoned into accounts he couldn't trace. The car, gone. The condo, vacant, but paid for months in advance. The business, nothing more than fake documents and empty promises. He went to the local police, clutching stacks of receipts, bank statements, and photos. The officer listened politely, then shook his head. "Difficult case," he said flatly. "She is Thai. Money already gone. Very hard to get back." Michael pressed harder, begged for help. But deep down, he already knew there would be no justice. Foreigners who lost money to love scams rarely saw it again. He was just another name on a long list of men who came to paradise and left in ruins. But money was only half the wound. The deeper scar was emotional. Michael fell into depression. Days blurred into nights spent staring at the ceiling of his empty condo, replaying every memory with Tipnare. The way she laughed, the way she whispered, "You are my only one." Now, each memory felt poisoned. Shame consumed him. He avoided his expat friends, too embarrassed to admit the truth. He ignored calls from his children, unable to face their disappointment. He drank heavily, his body weakening under the weight of his grief. At his lowest, he wondered if he had destroyed his life beyond repair. Yet, slowly, fragments of resilience began to surface. An older expat he barely knew knocked on his door one evening. He had heard the story. Instead of judgment, he offered something Michael hadn't felt in months: understanding. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last," the man said. "Thailand eats men like us alive. But you can't let it finish you. You either learn, or you die here." The words stung, but they also ignited something inside him. Michael realized he had a choice: remain a broken man, or claw his way back. It wasn't easy. Recovery never is. He moved into a smaller apartment, cutting costs wherever he could. He sold what little he had left of Tipnare's gifts, even though each item burned with memory. He reconnected with a few friends, not proudly, but humbly, admitting what had happened. To his surprise, some of them didn't mock him. Instead, they shared their own stories. Because the truth is, Michael wasn't alone. There were countless men with scars just like his, each betrayed by the promise of love in paradise. And slowly, with their support, he began to stand again. Today, Michael is not the same man. He's older, wearier, and far more cautious. The money is gone, but he has found something different in its place: clarity. He knows now that Thailand's beauty hides dangerous traps. That fake love can destroy a life as surely as any addiction. That an expat dream can turn into a nightmare if you mistake flattery for affection, fantasy for reality. He still struggles with shame, with the emptiness of what he lost. But he tells his story for one reason: to warn others. "Don't do what I did," he says quietly. "Don't let loneliness blind you. Don't confuse youth and beauty with love. And never, ever hand over your future to someone you barely know." In the next part, we'll wrap this story with a final warning and lessons learned, a checklist of red flags, psychological insights into why scams succeed, and a message that could save someone watching this right now. Michael's story reminds us of a brutal truth. He retired in paradise, but it ended in hell. What he thought was love turned out to be a romance scam that drained his savings, his dignity, and nearly his will to live. But if you're watching this, you still have a choice. Don't let loneliness make you blind. Don't mistake sweet words for real love. And don't hand over your trust, or your wallet, without proof that the woman beside you is truly who she claims to be. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing in Thailand isn't the heat, the traffic, or the nightlife. It's the smile that hides a lie. Friends, that was a real story we can all learn from. If you found this warning valuable, share it with anyone dreaming of moving to Thailand, or anyone already in a relationship that feels too good to be true. And if you've ever been through something similar, drop a 1 in the comments. If you're watching this with fear in your stomach, type 2. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. Because what you don't know about Thailand could cost you everything. Stay safe, stay smart, and remember, in paradise, the most beautiful trap is always the one that feels like love.